Today we kōrero with the tenacious and positive Sam Dakin. Sam is a New Zealand Olympian competing at the Tokyo and Paris Olympic Games. He has also got a bronze medal from the Birmingham Commonwealth Games. He has a Bachelor of Business Analysis and a postgraduate diploma in Innovation and Entrepreneurship from Harvard University. Sam is the co-founder of Slow Coffee Roasters and is a staunch advocate for mental health. We kōrero about his whānau, the early days, their relationship now, and how important quality time is with people. The team around him and the environment that he creates, OCD, mental health, and being where your feet are, and how some of the best days of his life began as being his worst. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for having us today, Sam. We're super pumped to talk to you and super pumped we get to see you after you've been at the Olympics.
Yes, it's worked out well.
Yeah, so we always kick off with one of our wellbeing cards. Cool. And our goal is just to try and get people having better conversations and asking better questions. So let's see what you get.
Oh, do I read the question?
Yep, if you read it up right.
What superpower do you wish you could have? I think I wish I could go back to like the favourite moments of my life and just relive them again and not just live them as memories, but just presently live them over and over again.
That's an amazing answer.
I reckon that'd be so.
Yeah. What would be some of those moments?
There's lots of sporting moments I'd go back to. Like I'd like to go back to Paris right now and that feeling of when I broke the national record in the flying 200 and then watching the girls win silver in the team sprint and go back and be a part of those moments. But there's so many I go back and
I love that. I love that it's actually getting into like engaging in that moment too. That's so cool. So tell us about you. Tell us about where you grew up and tell us about your whānau.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Auckland, lived there basically my whole childhood apart from a brief stint of 2.5 years in Australia where I did my first year at primary school there and avoided the snakes and managed to make it back to New Zealand. And then, grew up in Auckland. I went to Meadowbank Primary School and then I went to St Kitts College from year 7 and finished up there in 2014. And then I packed up my entire life and moved to the Waikato, spent a year at the halls in Hamilton, made some great friends and got my education there and then moved to Cambridge in 2015. I've been here 9 years now.
Wow.
Doing that, and my family are still basically all in Auckland, apart from my brother and sister that have moved to the UK recently, but mum and dad have still up there and see them all the time. They're kind of, my whānau is just like everything to me, and mum and dad are just two of my best mates as well. And the whole family talks every day, so it's super, super special and feel very privileged and lucky to have a family like that because I know not everyone gets that. There's plenty of dysfunctional families out there and we've been fortunate enough that we have an extremely functional one. So.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm the guy that calls my mum and dad every day. So whatever's goods or bads or just to check in, they'll be like, so what are you calling for? I don't know, just seeing what you're up to.
Yeah, I basically call mum or dad every time I leave track on the way home at like 4 p.m. because I'm just, it's like a 5 or 6 minute drive and down to them, see what's going on.
I read something the other day that said if somebody calls you when they're in the car, be even more grateful for their time that they're calling you because they could be listening to music.
They could be. Yeah.
And are choosing to talk to you instead because I'm a carpool karaoke girl. So, if I'm talking on the phone, it's a big deal. So that's pretty special.
That's it.
Now, you said when we caught up that, and this really caught my attention, was that your mum was a stay-at-home mum and your dad was CEO of a pretty massive company here in Aotearoa. And yet you remember him being at assemblies and sporting stuff, which I reckon is frickin' special, to be honest. So tell us about that and how that's shaped you, who you are today.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's actually a really interesting point. I think, so like mum, there's myself, I'm the oldest. I got a sister and then a younger brother. And mum, basically from when I was born, had stayed at home the whole time and she worked intermittently throughout that. But I don't remember it, but dad was studying heavily in the early days as well as working, and then when he was quite young, became the CEO of Goodman Property, which is obviously quite a big job in New Zealand at the time to grow that portfolio in the commercial sector. And as time went on, the job was bigger and bigger and the company was bigger. But I never felt, and we never felt as children, that his job was super busy or that he went away. And like you said, I don't think I don't feel like he missed assemblies or sporting events or anything, which was super cool because I think I watched other kids I think the subsequent nature of going to private school in St Kitts is that you're in a community of highly intelligent people and highly successful people and their families. And you hear a lot of stories of of kind of parents that are absent, and you can see that behaviour occur in children. So I always felt really grateful, and more grateful as I got older, that they were always there for us and always made time for us. And someone actually said to me the other day, that was a really interesting reflection for me, that, look, it's so impressive that you've been to 2 games, you've started 2 businesses, but you're always there when anyone needs you. And I thought, well, that's probably the trait that my parents have instilled in me. So yeah, it's quite an interesting reflection just that I've had quite recently to see that. And I think that's probably definitely wise, that however Dad did it, he always found time to be there for us and be there as a family.
Yeah. I love that, and it's also an appreciation point too, because often people can go, "Oh, Sam's too busy. Like, we won't ask him for that, or we won't annoy him with that because he's got too busy." You know, like, but actually, I will show up, and I value showing up. It's not a pain to show up.
No, not at all. And I don't think, and I totally don't want to go through life and get to the end and be like, "Oh, I worked so hard," but at the end of the day, all you die with is your memories and the time you spent with the people you care for. So to me, that's more important than anything else.
Yeah. He worked happily ever after. Yeah. It's not the way you want the story to end. No, I agree.
He lived happily.
Yeah. So on that, so your work ethic is pretty exceptional, and your ability to really apply yourself. So talk to us about that and how it's really helped you with your professional sport journey to date.
Yeah, for sure. I think it probably started, like, I've always been a really high functioning character. I've always liked the chaos to an extent. Like, I definitely have, like, ADHD, and I've had bad OCD and mental health, and as bad as those things had, they're like my greatest traits at the same time. My ability to just obsess about something, but for short periods of time, and I became really efficient with that. I'm not good at doing long study periods of 6-8 hour blocks. I'm super good over half an hour to an hour, and I can get a lot done. And I think I took those kind of things I learned at school and the time management pieces, and it's just kind of flowed through sport in the way I've applied myself. And for me, sport actually became quite an easy place to be, because it was actually quite simple in my brain. Like, and now we're in the high performance program, my job is just to turn up and do the things that are put in the program and challenge them at certain points and understand them. But ultimately my job, I see it as actually very simple 95% of the time. It gets obviously complicated at competition when you have to deliver and you have to get it right, and that's quite stressful. But it's all those things that I know that if I can just turn up and apply myself really well in a short space of time, I'll deliver something pretty great. And that flows everywhere in my life.
It's outstanding, and it shows with your businesses and everything else you've got going on. So as a leader, you have 3 basic principles. So talk to us about what those are.
It's a good. I've probably told you what they are, and I can't remember them. But I think, like, leading how you want other people to operate is obviously one of them. And I like to lead from the front and by example. Like, I never want to ask someone else to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And I also believe that if you can just get people to flourish and be the best they can be, that's how they'll operate best. So you just put the wraparound support around them that enables them to do that. And then just caring for people is also it. Like, I kind of reject the notion that it's business and you need a professional boundary. Like, I have to understand the person and what they do and their life and how they operate, because if I can do that, then I can care for them and they'll flourish and everybody will win. That's usually how I operate in the leadership space.
That respecting the human, I find that just an amazing key point to so many things, because we often expect people to just show up and be able to deliver whatever this thing is that we want them to deliver, but actually respecting that humans just come from whatever's gone on in their lives, and that they don't just have to park that at the door, that there is more to them than just this figure or body that shows up to do.
Totally. And I think it's harder for people to park stuff at the door. Like, I think if you work in an environment that's okay to bring kind of the stress into work or whatever's going on in your life into work, you'll actually operate better, because then you're not holding on to it. Like, people get really stressed when they have to hold on to things. We're always better when we let it out. And I think that's kind of no different. I think there's obviously boundaries, and there's different things you're going to tell people. You're not going to give your life story at the desk over work and talk about your marriage or whatever, but you've got to let an element of it in there. And I think that's where we've seen kind of the world change in probably the last 10, 15 years around how we look at well-being in the workplace and how we manage that. And if anything, for me, it's extra highlighted in sport, because all the support staff care about is the entire package. In order to get an athlete to perform on race day, you need to understand everything. And they need to be good in all areas. Their psychology needs to be good. They need to be happy at home. Like, the biggest contributor to Olympic success or ill success at the Olympics is basically home life.
Yeah.
So in order to manage home life, you have to be open about that and you have to understand it. So I think that's kind of where I've developed that mindset or belief that that's how it should work. And maybe that'll get challenged when I leave sport, but at the moment that's very much where I see it.
No, that's will make you that stronger leader going into not sporting areas. Is taking it. Because to be fair, they didn't used to care about the human behind the athlete for a really long time. So I love hearing that shift happened and that it's a strong shift and not kind of our well-being tick box, surface level stuff, that we've actually come to a point now where we see them, the whole them. Yeah, it's really, really important. But in the sporting community, you're a massive advocate, obviously, for mental health, but you're also trying to make the space better for other people, which I think is a pretty special thing. So talk to us about that and how that adds purpose outside of your pursuit for medals, obviously.
For sure, yeah. I think it adds like really deep purpose, and we work a lot. Every year we have to submit what we call an individual performance plan, or what's known as an IPP. And one of the things that's at the top of mine is kind of a success statement. So when I leave sport, what does it look like? And one of the key points for me from the very get-go is that I had to leave the space in a better place than I found it. And that's a very open-ended question, but it's kind of like led me into all the things that I've done now to try and advocate better for athletes, to improve the pay, to have better rights, to have more independence around how decisions are made, to have more involvement in how the decisions are made, and be really relentless about that. And I think whilst it's been scary at times, I've managed to navigate it in a way that, I've fought the organisations and been on the other side of the table, but they still ask me to be on the committees that will help them improve. So I see that as a sign that I've gone about it the right way in a respectful manner, that they understand what I'm trying to do and what the athletes are trying to do. But we just have different viewpoints on how we're going to get there. So for me, look, it adds a great deeper purpose to sport, and it adds a lot kind of beyond the bike. And I really like that. At times it's quite draining. Like maybe I've only got a year or two left of it before I have to hand it to someone else, because at some point, I feel like I've exhausted all I can offer, and all my kind of intelligence around that area has, and it needs a fresh brain. But at the moment, it's certainly made my career even more rewarding than just trying to chase medals and win bike races. Who are you without the medal? I think that's what we talked about, that cool runnings quote. But I think that's in any, whether it's a business, a community organisation, whether it's sports, realising that we all eventually do want the same thing. But earlier in the conversations, it may seem like we're trying to get different things, but or fighting. But actually, when we actually go, so we want everybody to be comfortable here. We want everybody to be successful, and if we can agree to that, then we can work the pathway out. And I think that sounds like what you guys are doing really well. Is we're disagreeing, but we don't disagree about where we're trying to get to. No. We're currently disagreeing about how we're going to get there, but we're all on the same page that we want people to be healthy, that we want them to be, I think if we can come out a bit and have that conversation first, totally. And I think all we're trying to do in those, everyone has the best intentions, and it's about trying to remove the egos from the room as much as possible along the way to actually get to the decisions, because you're talking about people's livelihoods, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about athletes that have worked their entire lives for these things. So you've got context that's captured up in that. You've got sport directors that have got 25 years of experience around how things have worked in the past that are caught up in that, and that's why you end up in court or hearings, because you need processes that enable you to step out and have an objective view from others that will enable you to eventually get to a point where a decision's made. And that takes a long time. And it takes people to be in the right headspace to take that. Like, you could tell me something and I could be like, but I'm not listening to you because I'm still thinking about my thing, or you've hurt my feelings, or my heart's in it because my brother did this, or so it goes exactly back to what we were talking about before. Like, at the end of the day, it's just people in a room. Like, it's always a person, it's always a human with a brain, with stuff that's going on outside, and what's happening when they come in is whatever's happening in the outside life is the context they're going to apply in that moment. If they're tired, if they're upset, if they're frustrated, that's kind of the energy they'll bring to the room. And it's very rare that you can get someone that will bring the same consistency every single day and the same amount of decision making every single day. So you've got to work inside those as well. So, which is what makes the world a beautiful but overly complicated place at the same time.
Hard to get consistency sometimes. Now, being an elite athlete is one thing, What I find really intriguing is that you're effectively having to compete against your teammates to be the best, in that top sort of 1% to be able to qualify,
Sure.
to be the ones that go forward.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what that feels like, because you're trying to be a teammate, you're trying to be a leader, and you're also a human at the end of the day too. So how does that all work for you?
I think it's relatively I think the cool thing about sport is that you almost sign this, like, you do this handshake deal when you all go in that you all want to win and you all do whatever it takes to get there, and everybody knows that, and everybody knows that you're selfish in that sense. So there's always that piece of respect, and we just talk about when you go out there, it's like going to war, it's every man for themselves, and I don't know if I've ever had a teammate that doesn't understand that. I think if you didn't have that, it would get really complicated. But we talk about, and when I've worked with DG or David Galbraith around kind of what that mindset looks like, it's like, well, you want everybody to be the best they can be, because when you get to the games, if you won a medal or when you make the team, you want to be because it was the best, not because someone was injured or someone didn't get it right that day. You know, when you roll over on your deathbed at the end of the day, you want to be like, I did it because I deserve to be there, not just things outside of my control. And when you have a team that's that mindset, it just works and it just flows. And we just want to see everybody thrive. And thriving doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to get to the games.
What does thriving or success look like for each individual in there? I love that. Now, I was a elite netball manager there for a few years, so I really understand that team behind the athlete, or the athletes and the teams that are sitting there. So talk to us about when you get up on the podium, those people who are on your shoulders or have had your back. What does that feel like?
Oh, it's amazing actually. Like I tried to get through a thank you and the debrief to the staff, and I just completely broke down. So I'll try not to completely go there. But what I find so incredible is that there's these people, our support staff, whether it be physios, nutritionists, coaches, physiologists, S&Cs, like the list just goes on and on, logistics managers. They devote their entire life to my success or me trying to achieve my dreams. And I understand that behind that they have their own dreams they want to have, and they want to be the physio that was at the games. But at the end of the day, they don't get a step up on the podium. Like it's us that ends up on TV. It's us that ends up with the sponsorship deals. It's not them. And they devote their whole life to doing that, and will work tireless hours. If I get injured, my physio will see me at any point,
Anytime.
or DG will take a call from me at any moment I need it. Like there's so many things that happen, and I think that's just the greatest privilege you can have in life, that someone will do that for you. So when you stand up at the podium or achieve a personal best, or like we did at the games, it's just, to an extent, it's actually indescribable. And that's probably why I went in the debrief when I was trying to thank the staff and look in the eyes, I just couldn't, because it's just, it makes me feel so loved and so humbled and so privileged to be able to do this for a job and have people that will turn up every day for us.
And they would continue doing that because of the person you are. There's that stuff too. Like they wouldn't just do that for anybody. They'd eventually be like, maybe this isn't the thing for us. Or
that is cool. That is special. Yeah, and I think so. Our mechanic put it perfectly actually, because he was kind of I understand where you're coming from, but not everyone can be an athlete, and not everyone can do what you do. But I can be a mechanic, or I can be a physio. And I was like, that's actually a really interesting point as well, is that we kind of look at it from the point of view that everybody wants to be in the position we're in, but that's actually not the case. Some people aren't wired to want to do this, or to want the pressure that we have and the highs and the lows that occur. Like you can get as much reward to an extent from being a support staff member and being involved in the process that enables you to win Olympic medals or be a part of a really good campaign with a little bit less stress. A little bit less stress. But that's the stuff too, though, in workplaces as well, is every person's role matters. That everything contributes. You couldn't do what you do. You could train your ass off, but you couldn't if you didn't have a bike that was functioning. You're not gonna, exactly. If I get injured, how do I get fixed?
So like they'll know their purpose. And that's the thing. I don't think there's any thankless jobs if you really see the purpose that your job contributes to this next part, and they'll just be so proud, proud. Like proud parents. Whenever girls do amazing things, I'm just like a proud mother sitting in the background.
Exactly.
Had a tiny, tiny piece of that. Now, you've had a massive battle with OCD and really struggled. So talk to us about that, because I can't even imagine how that feels. So, talk to us about that journey.
For sure. Look, for me, so started in 2018, so I'd have been about 21, 22, and I was fine. Like, I had probably a few like anger issues as a child and like some inner demons. I was fine that I probably didn't realise until now. And one day I just woke up. I was in America, I can distinctly remember it, and just started having this quite disturbing thought on repeat, really. And I kind of didn't think too much of it, and I thought it might go away. And then this thought started from happening, 10 minutes a day to an hour a day to 2 hours a day to 3 hours a day, to the point eventually where it just ruminated in my head 16 hours of a day, every moment. I was awake, and really started to kind of affect my life, and I stopped seeing certain people because of the way it made me feel, or the way I thought that people were perceiving me because of what was going on in my head. And I had no idea what it was, because I'd never heard of what we call as pure OCD. So traditional, when people refer to OCD, they refer to obsessing about cleaning the house or turning the light switches on and off, and I had functions of that. Like, I remember going to America then again in 2019, and I hadn't turned off the switches in the house, and I was convinced the plane was going to crash and I was going to die. And I believed that. I knew it was irrational, but I believed that was going to happen, which obviously made for quite a scary flight.
Yeah.
I didn't die, obviously. And but the main thing for me was what they call the pure I, which is basically ruminating thoughts about things that are quite disturbing. And I spent so long trying to figure out what's going on in my head, and I was too scared to tell people about what this was. And even though I saw a psychologist every week, it still was an uncomfortable thing for me to do, and started just scrolling the internet and Googling this thing that was going on in my head. And eventually one day I was on Reddit, and I found this like feed of pure OCD, and these people just described exactly what I was feeling. And it was just like this just relief. I was like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Other people have gone through this. It's actually relatively normal, but not many people have talked about it. So for me, once I found that, which was the day before I left for my first World Championships in Berlin, and I remember my mum coming down, and because we had a trial 2 days before we left for Berlin Worlds for the reserve spot, and I won the trial. Whilst dealing with kind of all of this and figuring out what was finally going on in my head that I've been dealing with for the last 24 months, which has been tormenting me. And my mum came down to kind of congratulate me and have dinner with me about the trial, and I ended up telling her about kind of everything that had gone on, and then got on the plane, and my amazing mum kind of sorted out a psychiatrist to see that when I got back from Berlin, he contacted me whilst I was in Berlin and helped me there and said, if you need anything, let me know. And then that was kind of basically where I started the healing process. So I suffered really, really badly for 2 years, in a pretty horrendous way, in a pretty lonely way. And then I saw Jock Matthews, who was a psychiatrist, and he really started helping me on that journey towards getting better. And then I worked with DG alongside the two of them. And I went backwards again before I went forwards, which is often the case.
Yeah.
Now I've never been happier. I've found like what true happiness feels like, and what it means to literally love your life every single day. I tell people, when people ask, well, how happy do you feel? I go, well, sleeping's just a pain in the ass because my life's so good. I just want to be up again. And I would do it all again, because I don't think if I hadn't suffered, if I hadn't had to have those conversations, if I hadn't had to delve that deep, I really wouldn't understand what it feels like to be this happy. And we talk about having basically the light and the darkness, or the yin and the yang, is what DG and I talk about. And if you don't have the comparison, if you don't have one, you can't have the other.
Yeah.
And I think once you have that perspective, you're actually thankful for the struggles as opposed to regretful for them, or I wish it hadn't happened to me. And because ultimately you can't change what's going to happen, but you can deal with it.
Yeah.
And then off the back of that, when I got to where I was just like, man, this can help so many people, and I feel comfortable to talk about it. And if I can talk about it more, then it'll help others. And it's just kind of grown from there, really, and have tried to do it in a way that's really me and really organic, and not shoving it down people's faces. And because I think it can get tacky, it can get cheesy, but and I think it's influenced a lot of people around me, and I think is slowly helping to change the game, and particularly men's mental health and the conversation around that.
But you can also imagine there's someone else who may be in a similar position to you who's Googling it, who sees your story, and you might be, for what Reddit did for you, you might be that person for them to be like, oh my God, I'm not alone. It's not, I'm not a.
Yeah, and I know that's happened because I've had probably 15, 20 people reach out to me randomly from around the world that say, oh, I just read your message on, or you've read your article on Mental Health New Zealand you did a while ago, or here, and it's changed my life, basically. And ended up on calls with people from America and just give them the time.
Yeah.
They just want to talk for half an hour. And it's incredible. So it's been really, really humbling and really, really cool.
And straight back into the values you talked about of giving your time, right? And just putting it out there and being available. If it's outstanding,
totally.
Sam. Much respect, sir.
Thank you very much.
So what do you do now regularly to keep your mind in check and sort of do all of it? Do you have a little thing that you do?
Yeah, I've probably got a series of things. Like I haven't since after the games. I haven't got back in journaling, but I was journaling every single day. We talked about kind of like wiring the green. So I just started going for sheer positivity. Like what was going great in my life? What do I love about it? What am I really grateful for? Each and every day.
Yeah.
And so I do that. Kind of my morning routine around making my coffee is fundamental to that, and about being present and doing that and enjoying it and just sitting. And I quite often sit out on the deck out here if the sun's shining and just look at the bushes and the trees and just let the thoughts flow, or just be where my feet are. And I think just doing those things and having those checkpoints throughout the day are really important. I'm lucky that obviously as an athlete I spend a lot of time kind of doing mindless tasks to an extent, so I can just let my mind wander. And like this morning I was out on the road for an hour, and that's a really nice time to just think or stress or do whatever needs to be done.
Whatever needs to be done.
And hopefully when you get home you're feeling a little bit better, or you can start to deal with the things that you thought about on that ride. So and just seeing my friends and talking to them and staying in communication with people and being really open around how I feel. I'm just brutally honest kind of with people every day where I'm at and with my friends, and I think that's how I deal with it a lot. I think you add up all those things, that's what keeps me in check. And like anyone, I battle as well. Sometimes you just have days where you just got to survive. Just got to tread water. But you just ride with that. Some of the best days of my life have started with the worst feeling I've ever had. So
wow, I love that. That's going to be a quote, I bet you, that's going to go onto our board later. But that's the stuff, right? It's what we do when we engage with whatever it is, how we choose to engage. The thing is the thing, but it becomes bigger or smaller for how we choose to get involved with it. So
the greatest moments are often the smallest ones, like just what did it feel like to sit there and have a coffee and talk to your friend? This can be more amazing than, going and Stade de France in front of 80,000 people at the closing ceremony. Like it's all just feelings and presence and how you want to look at the situation.
Amazing. You also love music too.
Love music.
That's bloody. When you ride, do you ride music in, or do you go silent?
No. Music in most of the time. And it'll vary. It'll either be like what you guys listened to when you came in today, like some laid back kind of UK rap from Loyal Kana, or just some disgustingly filthy D&B set blasting in my ears. Or Rihanna or Beyonce. Like I've no affiliation to any particular genre.
Yeah. That's a great way of saying that. Yep.
I just go where the wind blows me, so to speak.
I love that. I'm super eclectic, and so
you should be. Why are people
not?
fixated? There's so much joy out there and such a different array of genres. So, I'm into it.
Literally this morning I was at my gym and they had a country playlist on, obviously backed with some bass and stuff. And I'm singing away and everyone's looking like, what the hell? And it's like new country music. Who cares? Andrea Bocelli just brought out a new duets thing. And it's got Chris Stapleton and it's got Dua Lipa and people are like, ugh, like operating. And I'm like, listen to it before... right through to R&B, and I'm all over the show.
100%.
And that can just turn your day.
Yeah, totally.
Or if you need be low, then I have a mellow playlist for that moment where it will bring you to there.
Yeah. Bring you right back down.
It will bring you back to where you need to be. For anybody who's supporting somebody who's struggling with mental health, what would be some of the advice that you'd give to them?
I think you just got to try and get the person to talk and just really listen to them. I think what I've learned is that trying to solve is not what you want to do. You just the person actually solves himself
Yeah.
a lot of the time when they can talk about it. So it's about asking the right questions, and I think the advice is you'll know what to do. Like humans are relatively empathetic by nature, others more, some are more than others, but I think we all kind of get how to help if we want to help. And I think it's also okay to say, look, I don't think I'm the right person to help you in this situation, but I reckon you should talk to your friend so-and-so. I think that's okay as well. And I think when I've helped people, I just listen to them. And you don't have to solve it. Take them for a beer or take them for a coffee, or just take their mind off things and just give them your time. Give them your time and your care and your joy. Because sometimes also seeing other people be happy and get on with their lives can also help them as well. And that kind of, we talk about energy's never stopped, it's just reciprocated. So, or moved in a different direction. So if you can infect your energy into someone that's battling, that's also a really positive thing to do as well. I think two people that are struggling at the same time and no help to each other, I think that's a really dangerous situation. So I think it's about acknowledging that when you're struggling, you probably need to find someone else that's flourishing that'll help you. And it doesn't take long, 20, 30 minutes. Having a yarn with someone can completely change your perspective on how you're feeling and how you go forward.
Which is interesting, because when you're not in a low place and someone is, you almost don't want to bring the sunshine, because you feel like you're almost being like, how does that feel?
Yes,
I'm rubbing it in your face.
Yeah.
Instead of, so I feel like a lot of the time people possibly pull that right back and almost come down to where the person who's struggling is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Which I think is the totally natural response, because you don't want to kind of disvalue what the person's feeling and say, oh, you should be feeling this, like, why are you feeling that? It's just about being like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, of course you feel like that. Life sounds really hard at the moment. Or like, if your life does feel like bricks and nothing's really happy, then naturally you are unhappy. But have you tried just going out for a walk or doing this? And often if we're generalizing mental health to an extent to like depression, which is largely where people are, they're just unhappy. They feel like they're in mud, right? And can't get out. It's just, they start to then function like that. They stop doing the things that they enjoy. And the way you can help them is to be like, oh, like, mate, you used to really enjoy going for a walk in the park on a Sunday, or going for that run with your mates, or going to the run club, and you're not doing that at the moment. Can I come with you and take you for a run? And hold them accountable to help them out of those situations. And then it's also about not being afraid to tell the person they need to go and seek professional help. And I've done that before, and I've driven friends to appointments and sat in the waiting room, or if they want me to go in with them, I'll go in with them. And I think as a result of being open about mental health, I've ended up in situations that I wish I hadn't, and with people that are genuinely on edge and close to being suicidal. And that's a really scary place to be, and that's a place I can't help. And that's when I've called on the powers that be and the professional help that I've had around me in the sporting sphere to aid those people. But it is really complicated. There is no guidebook on how we do this, but I think ultimately if people trust themselves, they'll make the right decisions to help their friends and their family.
It's amazing. That's great advice as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, there was a race that you were in with a rather large crowd where you fell off your bike, you got back on, and you won that race. I feel like there's so many lessons sitting in this just for our day-to-day lives with everything that's been going on. So talk to us about that moment and how you train, I guess, for those kind of derailing moments that can potentially happen, and what went through your mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is at Champions League in London, and it's a 3-up. So normally in our match sprints, there's only 2 people on the track, but because of the TV time and the crunch time of 3 hours, they do it with 3 people. And I was in the middle, which is the hardest place to be, because you've got to look forward and back at the same time. And unfortunately, God didn't invent us with eyes in the back of our head as much as your teachers used to tell you that they had them. And I just clipped a wheel in front and I fell over. And London is the most insane place you'll ever race in. The Brits love track cycling. The London Velodrome was designed with the acoustics that when the noise went up, it would bubble back into the middle where the riders were. So it was a really athlete noise design velodrome. And I'd fallen over. I go, oh no, this isn't good. But one of the things I've learned in sport and we've always talked about is when anything goes wrong, a mishap or a restart or whatever, you just go into this like really mindless state. Like I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just rolling around.
Yeah.
To be honest, my mind's super blank. Okay, well now and then you go, okay, we're back on the start line. We're back here. And you go, oh, that's quite cool. I've got a bit of adrenaline that I didn't have before because I've fallen over. How do I use that? And then you just go out and deliver the exact same thing. It's a new race. It's a new time. You're not worried about the crash. You just get on with doing the race. And then I was like, damn, this is going to be cool when I win this. Because I came into the bow and I knew I was in a good position and crossed the line. And I was like, that's a pretty damn cool moment to be able to do that in front of the crowd. And they were loving it. And you know, it doesn't matter who you are in the world or how much money you have. You can never buy being in the front of 6,000 people solely looking at you cheering your name. And that's not an egotistical thing. That is just an unbelievable feeling. Yeah. And such a special feeling, which is heavily addicting. Yeah. So yeah, hold moments like that really, really true. And those are the, you know, when we answered that well-being card at the start, those are the moments I, you know, want to go back to and just relive over and over again because they're short, they're intense, but they're amazing.
It's like that. Yeah. The Black Ferns talk about the privilege of pressure. So how have you realised that sort of specialness when you're representing Aotearoa?
Well, I think that's a perfect description, really, isn't it? Because in order to have pressure, well, you've got to be wearing the fern, so that's amazing. You've got to be normally paid to do that job and do that every day. That's amazing in itself. And you're also racing in front of people that have paid their hard-earned money to come and watch you. So those are all pretty special things. And we talked early on around reframing nerves. I talked about reframing nerves as special energy because when I relabeled it special energy, it was stuff I could never find anywhere else. I couldn't find it in training. I couldn't find it sitting here on the couch. The only place I could find it was at the highest of pressure of moments. And if we go back to what I was saying about, you know, energy can't be created, it can only be shifted. Well, we just shift that into the legs and into the body and into race day. And then once you have that belief, you go, jeepers, like anything's really possible today. Because if I'm going this good in training, imagine what happens when I get to race day and I have the special energy. Like, that's where you start to see unbelievable moments at Olympics and pinnacle events because people have figured out how to channel the stuff we can't measure, the data we can't find, and I hope we never find. To do special things. So I love it. I look forward to it. And when I say I look forward to it, it doesn't mean it's a comfortable thing. It doesn't mean you're sitting there at ease. But you know that that's part of the challenge, and that's why it feels rewarding. Because if there was no pressure and you could just go out there and ride a national record and win a medal, it just wouldn't feel the same. The reason it feels amazing and is a euphoric moment is because it's so damn hard.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm probably never going to get to feel like that, but that's amazing. But it is. I think it's also the acknowledgement, you know, when we talked about all those people on your shoulders, you know, you don't take those things for granted. So that and pressure's what you make it almost. Like they're not sitting there going, he better win this.
No.
You know, like it's, and same with the crowd, like they're not all sitting there going, if New Zealand don't win, I'll never come into another. So it's that stuff too of what we make pressure to be. Like if we can harness it in all the right ways and not sort of flip it, that, yeah,
totally. And I think ultimately you're out there. You know, we actually just talk about being out there for ourselves because that's what we're there for. I'm there because it makes me happy. Like my parents are going to love me no matter what I do out there. They don't care. Like of course they want me to do well because I'll be happier. But they just love seeing me chase my dream and do something I love. So ultimately, when you get out there and you apply the pressure, it's because you chose to, and it's because you want to be there. And we talk about that often. That if you really don't like it, just go home. No one can stop you. And when you kind of have that mindset and that understanding, I think it changes everything. It's a choice. You've chosen the pressure. You've chosen the privilege to have the pressure.
It's not that sacrifice. It's the choice.
Someone's adorned it upon you. So.
I love that. Now, when we caught up, you talked about some really important pillars for you. So whānau, sport, and coffee. So we've done whānau really well. We've done sport well. So let's talk about coffee. So this journey with your coffee.
For sure.
Where it started and how it's been helping your mind as well.
Yeah, I think the coffee journey for me started, I guess, relatively late. But, I mean, I wasn't that into it, to be honest. When I went to school, I'd go to BP and buy a mocha now. And now, but I'd still do that occasionally, but very, very rarely. And I wasn't super into it. And I remember, and cycling is like strongly affiliated with coffee. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why that is. And I think it's because it just occurs at the times of people go to cafes.
Oh,
So the socialising occurred at cafes, not at pubs like you do with team sports
True.
that finish later in the evening. And it was also a good fuel, like caffeine and improves performance. And I think that's largely why there ended up being an affiliation there. And growing up and cycling and travelling the world, we went to cafes, and that's where we socialised. And we go to different parts around the world, and I'm into music and architecture and fashion, and all those things were tied into all these places. I could go and see a new fit out of a cafe, and if you go to a big city, there's people there wearing like dope clothes and playing cool music, and all that kind of cultural piece that sits within that just really fascinated me, and I liked how it made me feel, and I liked being a part of that. And then I just started to get more and more actually into the coffee, and I moved in with Eddie Dawkins, who was in the team sprint team at the time in Cambridge, and he had a coffee machine. I thought that's pretty cool, and started making coffee there, and eventually moved out. And I always said, I'm buggered now because I don't have a coffee machine, and got a coffee machine from mum and dad for my 21st, and then it just kind of it grew from there, and started making much more coffee at home and getting really into it and buying from different roasters around New Zealand. And then my entrepreneurial spirit just carried me through to wanting to roast coffee and to understand kind of how that all goes, and start a business around that, which is kind of where Slow Coffee Roasters formed. But I think what's sat behind that is that, throughout that mental health journey we talked about, like coffee was that central point of where I would sit down and I'd have to sit with my thoughts and sit with the uncomfortableness and try and be present in those moments. So it became a real central point for me to get healthy, basically, and get back to recovering. And now, instead of recovering, it's about that really happy point, and that part I look forward to most of my day, whether it's with someone or by myself, and just sit there and drink it and don't worry about too much other things. And so when I was thinking about, what am I going to call the coffee company, it's just kind of like slow makes sense. I want people to slow down. I want people to enjoy more of what the world has to offer, and more of what's in their cup, because I think coffee is one of the world's largest commodities, but it's one of the most impressive commodities that people drink on the daily. Like, we're still getting coffee from countries that don't have automated machinery, that aren't paid a fair wage. There's people in Kenya hand sorting your grapes and then pulping them and then putting them in a bag, and then they're shipped to America, and then they're shipped into New Zealand, and then we buy them off the importer, and then we roast them, and then we sell it to a cafe who then use a machine to brew, and then it's served to you, and you pay $5 for it. So it's about educating people around that as well, and being like, man, like when you drink that, just think about where this has come from, because it's come a lot further than the beer you pay $15 for in the pub. And I think that's really special. And we just believe that, and our tagline is that the world moves fast, slow down.
I love that.
So for me, it's a really important piece of my life. And it's not, if people you love coffee, it's about the caffeine. It's not about that. It's so far from that. It's about kind of exploring what it has to offer, and for me, it's offered me an entire new community outside of sport that I never would have met, and have kind of immersed myself into and started to learn more. And it's just refreshing for me to move outside high performance sport, and get outside the bubble, and it gives me a nice perspective each week that, hey, you're just riding a bike around an oval track. It's actually not that important sometimes.
It's not just men. Not all of us could do what you do, but I understand what you mean. That perspective, And it's true. I think the storytelling that you just did then is that beautiful part of it, right? It's whose hands have touched this as it's come through the journey, and has it come through the right journey, kind of thing. And are we following ethical procedures here when we're actually producing this stuff? And is it about $5? Or if we did 7, then could we pay people fairly where it started in the chain, kind of thing?
Exactly. And then it's also about going, look, if it tastes good, it's a miracle, like a genuine miracle, because the amount of hands that have touched that have got it right, that are individual of each other, is amazing. And that's where coffee's a really challenging industry, because unlike if you're brewing, say, wine or beer, the person that's made it and brewed it kind of has control of all that process, and all the person who's the consumer has to do at the end of the day is to pour it in the glass. Whereas as a roaster, the farmer in Kenya is relying on it getting stored properly on the boat or the plane over, that the importers have temperature controlled rooms, that I'm then going to roast it to a point which is fair and equitable and tastes well. And then I'm trusting the barista down at the cafe, and the person that manufactured their machine to make it well. And then we're going to hope that the person that drinks it thinks it tastes good.
Yeah, and then comes back again.
Yeah, so I find it fascinating. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. So can people buy this on their own, or is it only...
Yeah, no, they can buy it online, so at slowcoffee.co.nz, and We're in a few cafes around Cambridge and slowly growing. But yeah, we ship nationwide online, and so just check it out. Yeah.
Check it out, whānau.
Yeah.
Get in there.
Yeah.
Now, you place really high importance on the environment that you create around yourself as well. So we've sort of talked about our sustainable environment and how we truck our beans through. But now let's talk about how you mindfully sort of create that, and how do you achieve creating that environment around yourself?
I think I've never been overly deliberate about it. Like, I wouldn't say I've got a plan written down somewhere as to how that environment
You can be my
occurs.
friend if.
Yeah. I think you always you're attracted to people that I've always wanted to be around people that I felt were better than me or smarter than me. Like, I'd never wanted to kind of be an Adonis or be looked up to. I think that's probably happened at times, and being a leader that's occurred, but I'd rather be around people that I looked up to and challenged my views and made me feel I could be better and got me excited to do things. And it just goes back to that energy piece. Like, if you're around someone that's just sucking the life out of you and is really negative, it's just draining to be around. And I'll just spend less time around them.
Yeah.
And be quite relentless about that. And you don't always have to tell them, "Hey mate, you're sucking the life out of me. I don't want to see you this week."
My tank is dry.
Yeah. And so, sometimes you might have to do that. But I think it's about surrounding yourself with great people that share similar views to you, but are also really, really honest with you. And I've been so fortunate my whole life to always have had people that, will keep me in check and pull me aside if they think I need a bit of an ego check, or my behaviour's a bit out of line and stuff like that. And I think if you've got people doing that to you, you feel that you can do that back to them. And I think, I've just always chased people that kind of reciprocated those things, and just had a compass that I've followed and be relentless about following.
It goes back to what you said before as well. When someone says, "How are you?" you're actually honest, and so then you get that honesty in relationship actually, deepening with the people that you surround yourself with. Whereas if we're kind of like self, yeah, good bro, how are you? Yeah, good. And then you go have a beersy or go for a ride, but you don't get into that deeper stuff, then you can't have those other conversations to be like, "Hey man, like things felt off," or "It wasn't like you," because you haven't sort of scaffolded yourself into that relationship. So I think that's another testament to you that you're honest, and you've kind of created that environment probably without realizing that that's deepening.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. Like, if it's, and it goes back to kind of leadership qualities, right? Like, if you're willing to do something, then others will see that if you're willing to do it, they might want to do it as well. So if I turn up and someone goes, "How are you going?" "Oh, actually pretty average, to be honest. I'm feeling just a bit off, and I've got this going on in my life, but like I'm okay, but I just need you to know that's how I'm feeling today." And they go, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then when you see them next week and they're struggling and you ask them how they're going, you hope that they will reciprocate the other way. And I think that's really cool. And I've always had friends that it's just been really normal to talk about like how you're feeling and your mental health. And I've cried in plenty of men's arms over the years, and that to me has been like a real privilege. I'm like, how cool is that? That instead of being the typical Kiwi male or the tough Kiwi male, I've been the one that kind of went the other way. And you end up kind of being respected for it, and it helps others grow. And I've had some amazing conversations with men I'd never thought would talk about such a thing. Hard Southland farmers. And I'm just like, damn, that's cool. Damn, that's special. What a privilege.
Change, man.
Yeah.
I watched a video the other day, and they talked about mutual vulnerability, because we often be like, be vulnerable, but actually, are you getting that mutual vulnerability back? And if you're not, are we approaching it the right way? Because that's like our key. If we can get it to become that mutual vulnerability, where I'm not expecting you to do it, but when you do, you know that it's safe to do that with me because I'm doing that with you. Then that's your leadership, that's your relationships, that's all that stuff. It's like your perfect.
Yeah, because it's about people making people feel safe, right? Because if I'm going to open up to you, I want to know that you're not going to go wander down the street and go, "Oh, look, Dad's struggling," or this and that, and he's got this going on at home. Like, people need to feel trusted, that it's a safe space to be, and that comes back from exactly what you're saying. If you give something, it's more likely someone will give something back to you.
So my final question of the day, Sam, what do you want to be remembered for?
Just being a guy that lived the hell out of life, basically. Just being like, he had a crack at doing it all. He was always there for the people around him, and He certainly didn't like going to sleep at night because he loved it so much.
Yeah.
He loved living.
I love that. So our final one, so each interviewee, that is the best way to finish an interview. I love that so much. And you can tell you work with DG because he did an interview with us and he talked about, he wants on his epitaph, he doesn't want to be like, David Galbraith, father of It's like quintessential weirdo. So that someone says, it's like, that guy lived their life.
Yeah.
He's like, that's how you should live your life. Love it. Right, so every interviewee asks the next interviewer a question. So if you want to read that one out and answer it for us.
How do you define success? It's a good question. I think largely were you satisfied with how it went and were you happy with it? I think success can be delved into numbers or figures or data but that matters on the context, and I think were you better off than where you started?
Yeah.
It's a successful piece. I don't think we'll ever define success. I think every individual will have a different definition of what that is. For me in the context of sport, success is leaving it in a better place than I found it.
Yeah.
And that could be the environment, that could be me, leaving myself in a better place than I found it and having achieved more. And in life, I think it's the same.
Yeah.
For me.
I think it's safe to say with everything you've shared with us today and what you've gone through with your OCD, you have already left yourself in a better position than when you were early days in your cycling. So
it's like DG would say, well, you can die now. You're happy. I want to keep living for the record.
But good.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. It's been absolutely amazing. And I know there's so much that people will take away from this in so many different levels. But check out that coffee too, whānau.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll see you again next time. Ka kite.
Kia ora.